Hi, how you doing, Reynah?
Good, good. Always a pleasure to catch up with you, Mani, and I'm really grateful and thank you for joining us today.
No problem.
I mean, given the current market, I thought it's very apt to get great sales leaders like yourself to talk through what's happening in the market. So just a quick introduction about Mani and who he is. Mani is the market leader at SHL, a psychometric testing provider. And you know, I think Mani's got a massive background also in the IT space. And I think with the whole sales operation and leading teams for numerous years now, Mani, you've probably been in the sales leadership space for what, 20 plus years?
Yeah, I won't give my age away, but close, more than 25 now.
Yeah, and I've always enjoyed working with you, more so because it's fun, but you are a client of ours that we personally enjoy working with because you come back and nowadays as a recruiter we also pick and choose the clients we work with. So it's great to be a partner in the process and be constantly updated because I think you do that really well. Mani, what I'd like to get out of today is what you're seeing in the market, right? I mean, you can just tell us a little bit about what we've gone through and share that with our following. That would be great.
Great, no problem. Thanks, Reynah. The perspectives I'll share are drawn from my own experience as a sales leader and a hiring manager. As 25 plus years in various capacities, leadership capacities, and hiring people, hiring talent. But the more recent times, I think it's shifted. And also perspectives that I have gained from my role within SHL as a market director. I meet up routinely with talent acquisition specialists and talent management leaders as well, and what they are seeing and what we are hearing and what we are our research shows as some of the practices that we can do with the shifting landscape of talent. So that's the perspective that I'll share. In terms of the current market, do you want to just get stuck into it? Or do you want to go through it as a Q&A?
Yes. I think the whole idea of today's catch up, and we'll be talking to a number of sales leaders about this, is the war for talent, right? Yeah. It's a war out there, right? I mean, we've got offers going out and very rarely do we actually have the candidates we offer accept. So it's purely a candidate market. Yes.
So this is probably not going to be news for your audience. They'll be facing this in various capacities. Market update, probably there are 4 key trends that people are facing here. The first one, clearly, applicant pools are smaller. The Australian Bureau of Statistics, ABS, in the July statistic said 3.5% unemployment rate, the lowest it has been since August of, I think, 1974. There are 2 drivers for this. One is an increased participation rate of people getting more than usual people coming back into the employment and gaining employment. And the second trend is fewer people than usual losing their jobs, becoming employed to unemployed. So basically, your applicant pools are smaller. The second one is an interesting one, and it's been a trend that's been going on for a while, even pre-COVID. Candidates are less committed. It used to be the case, if you talk about more than a decade ago, a candidate journey was they'll research the companies they want to go into, they'll shortlist, they'll apply for jobs, then they'll speak to a recruiter. They're kind of vested in that selection process after they've gone through all of this. With technology, social media, and even products and services, the buying happens way before the first conversation happens between the seller and the buyer. It's the same thing with candidates who are looking for jobs. With a few clicks of a button, they can apply for tens of jobs. So I don't want to use the word fickle, as candidates are fickle, but the fact is they're less committed to the jobs for which they apply. Right? And they can switch between jobs, and they can start their journey with a recruiter conversation, or they can start the journey with an application for a job without having researched the company and without having shortlisted what they want out of the company. So because it's so easy to apply. And then they go through, all right, why would I take this job? Why would I join this company?
Mm.
And the journey starts at different stages. It's not sequential. So the candidates are less committed. The third aspect is roles are changing. Different people would have heard new ways of working, the future of work, FOW, call it what you like, read plenty of literature out there, plenty of research out there. They're driven by digital transformation, sales transformation, skills transformation. So the nature of work itself is changing. The nature of skills that a company or a business is looking to bring into talent they're looking to bring in is changing. And probably the fourth trend I would probably bring here is the need for talent acquisition specialists and hiring managers to balance between the short-term and the long-term strategic outcomes. So, for example, we know this, speed to hire and filling positions, bumps on seats. That's like, there are phrases that I've heard of. If they have a pulse, let's hire them, because we just can't get the people. Anyone is better than nobody in that position. Versus the longer term, what does my organization need? What's the talent competencies we need to get in? The diversity and inclusion objectives of the organization, the whole talent mobility and retention aspects, and balancing all of that. So you do have that tension, if you like, that you need to grapple with internally of the short-term operational priorities and challenges versus the long-term strategic objectives as a hiring manager. Yeah. So these are probably the four key trends, I would say, that we've been coming across in the market.
I agree. I think also in the sales space, right? The sales recruitment space, which is our niche and where your expertise lies. It's the mid-market sales roles, your candidates that aren't in the executive space, but it's that mid-market role, where there's a lot of movement, and that's probably where the war is. And we know that. So that, I think everything you're saying is relative to that space, isn't that right?
Yeah, you do find that at the leadership level, but you're right, in the individual contributor to the line manager kind of a tier of hiring, regardless of the nature of the industry and the nature of the role, I guess, you have these challenges. I mean, let's face it, entry-level, volume roles as well, there are challenges. I mean, there's a serious shortage of entry-level volume role applicant pool. There's a serious shortage in this country. It's aggravated further by the border closures, which are just only now opening up, immigration policies, and the whole restriction around travel. So it's just...
Exactly. It's quite funny in the tech space. I was talking to a client quite recently, and he said the most difficult roles to fill, and we knew this, are the SDR roles, your lead generators, right? And he says he would rather pay his lead generators 6 figures, so their base salary starting at 100K, and this is the market. So they are paying because there are lead generators that have been in that space for a while, and they are experienced. So you pay for experience, and they're paying them that much as a base, and that's never been seen before. So that's just the nature of what's happening in our marketplace. You're right, that's the space that is the most challenging, and we've seen that firsthand, as well, recruiting for you guys. And just with regards to, your recent hires, so you've obviously faced this firsthand, right, Mani? So what has been your 3 biggest challenges in the last 6 months?
So if I talk about my challenges, that's in the context of sales roles, business development, account managers, and those roles. From a broader context, the challenge has been in finding suitable talent. And especially if you're not a top of the market salary in terms of the top quartile paymaster, if you like, right? And there are unique challenges in this climate of a candidate shortage and a talent pool shortage situation. Paying money alone will not be enough. that's in and of itself not sufficient. So, but there are other challenges that you have. So for example, clearly sourcing. We're just not getting enough candidates through the door, qualified candidates, that is. And I'll come to that bit about qualified candidates in terms of how we have tried to address these issues, if you like. We are big as a company, SHL. It's in our DNA to be as diverse and inclusive as possible. And that's what is part of our mission as well, and our sense of purpose in terms of the market, is to have data-driven, objective talent decisions in both acquisition as well as in talent development and management, which therefore has a consequential outcome of having inclusive talent or a workforce that is as diverse as possible in all aspects of the word, right? So we try to live and breathe that. And hence I talked about the tension between the short-term operational drivers of let's get it filled and an open headcount and open territory is not yielding the business what it needs, versus the longer term in terms of does this bring the balance that we need at all levels of the organization. The third one is around the retention. Let's not forget retention, right? It's in any business, and a business like ours, which is subscription annuity based, we talk about growth, but you can't grow if you're leaking clients at the other end. It's the same thing around talent as well. You can't be hiring and continually hiring if you're churning people. So you do have to focus on the retention and why people join and why people stay, and have a value proposition around why they should stay, not just why they should join at the time of acquisition. And here's the final thing, and this is a segue into the solution part of it and how we have addressed some of these issues, right? Is around hiring for potential.
Yeah.
As opposed to hiring for what you can do and have done in the past versus what you could do and would do in the future. And that's what we've been trying to focus on as a company and with our clientele as well. But there's one other thing that the phrase going around, candidate ghosting. Used to be the case that we don't get calls back from recruiters as job applicants, and that was gutting, right? And I believe, by and large, the tables have turned.
Oh, I mean, I should have brought that up because yes, that's what we're facing, and you would think that you've applied for a role, and I mean, back in the day, you go back, when you'd get your candidate applicants call you back. But now they've applied for a role, but they're probably applying for numerous, and they probably, if they're great candidates, they're snapped up in a span of 24 hours sometimes. So the businesses that are taking longer and do have a retention strategy in place, which is I think SHL is a good example of that, because you do follow a process. You follow a structured, I would say more lengthier process than most employers, right? Because of the investment in time that you need from a candidate perspective, and that's sometimes where we've lost candidates as well. But saying that, in this market, what's your thought process on that?
So that again, healthy tensions, right? And you need to find a balance between that, finding the right candidate versus time to hire. So one thing that we do take pride is from application to decision, we can turn things around in a 1 week to 2 week time frame.
Yeah,
you are right. We are quite rigorous and structured in our selection process, and that's to make sure that we are the right fit for the candidate is the first thing. The candidate makes the decision before we make the decision on whether they are a good fit for us. We are passionate, and I am personally passionate about the fact that you have to sell to the candidate your employer value proposition, why your company, why this role. And to begin that journey, and I always have this informal exploratory conversation right up front when a candidate expresses interest, whether they apply for the job or just have expressed interest and not interested in, we don't know whether they'll go forward. It is a sales conversation where we are understanding what the candidate is looking for, or at least steering them on the journey of what they're looking for and the why in terms of role and company and industry, and how our company and the role that we have might be a good fit for what they're looking for. That's the first step, because once they get past that decision process that this is a good fit for me and for what I'm looking for, they are more invested in the process. Remember, I was talking about candidates being fickle and they're not committed, they're more invested. The second part is that even though there are 3 steps in the process and we have assessments, we have an interview, a structured interview, and then we've got assessment center where they have an exercise that they do, a role play exercise they do. Even though there are many, the time investment at each stage is only incremental and it increases as they go further down the stage. That is one of the things that our researchers said from a candidate experience point of view. You want to give them clarity in terms of what the process is, how long it will take, and the time investment that they are required at each stage of that process. And the process is structured so that the time investment at each step is sort of tail end weighted. So upfront, it's very light. We don't even look at CVs. It doesn't matter. I mean, the CVs is just hygiene factors. They got work rights. They got the basic,
communication skills,
background.
attitude.
Yeah. Now, even on that, Reynah, that we talked about broadening your talent pool. There is one aspect of the industry that looking at where I used to say degree required to now degree preferred, to not even worrying about degree for some types of roles, because there are self-taught and very accomplished professionals out there who can do roles, and sales being one of them. So we are genuinely betting on our science and our process, identifying good quality candidates based on their competencies and their potential. And we've been very pleasantly surprised at the kind of diversity that you get there, and the kind of hidden gems, if you like. The other thing that we've done is in terms of location. Location agnostic. It doesn't matter anymore. If anything, the last 2.5 years has taught anybody, it is that you do not need to be physically co-located where your head office is, and you do not necessarily need to be physically co-located where your clientele are. That's opened up a whole new planning paradigm in terms of territory design and segmentation and market segmentation, and it's also opened up a whole new avenue in terms of hiring.
I agree.
I just recently hired someone for our federal government Canberra market out of Queensland.
Yeah. And
it's regional Queensland as well. So not Brisbane. When I say Queensland, I mean Queensland, not Brisbane. Very effective.
I agree. Okay.
And it used to be the case that you need federal government, you need someone in Canberra who's been in Canberra for tens of years and understands. So anyway, you just have to look for innovative ways of opening up your talent.
I agree. I think something that I'd like to add, and Mani, you do this particularly well, is that these days it's the employers that are selling the role more than the candidates through that interview process. That initial exploratory chat where let's be honest, candidates, most sales professionals per se, because we're very focused on that's our niche and that's the kind of following we've got, even with sales leaders. It is so important to make the time to have that exploratory initial chat just to see whether there's synergy there, whether you like that candidate and the candidate likes you, because if you're the hiring manager, that initial engagement goal is so key, because you are also selling yourself as a leader, right? Because nowadays people join leaders, right? Or at least sales professionals join leaders, and the product you sell, because I feel now, especially in the tech sales space, needs to have a really strong value proposition, because there's so many sales roles out there that the product or the business or the solution you're selling really needs to be solving problems so that you can sell, right? And and the leader needs to be bought into that so that they can sell that to the candidate at that initial exploratory chat, which is what you do particularly well. Can you share a little bit more about why you invest the time at that, even if it's that 15-20 minute initial chat, because not everyone does that, because usually the process is talent acquisition, recruiter. By the time the candidate gets to the hiring manager, we may have lost the candidate.
Yeah, two reasons. Before the formal process, selection process starts and they put in an application, it's twofold. Before either party invests much more time, it helps qualify the fit at a objective, what they're looking for and the why of it. And that's all I start off with. I tell them the initial conversation is, I'm being interviewed. Ask me whatever questions you want of the company, the role, and myself, and I will answer so that you can make an informed decision on whether this would be a good fit for what you're looking for, and we can move forward. That's my preamble. And the only thing I'm looking to get out of that preliminary conversation, we're talking about 30 minutes here. Sometimes it goes for 45 minutes. Sometimes if we connect, I've even had an hour and a quarter, and we've had time. The only thing I'm looking to get out of the initial conversation, and I tell this to the candidate right up front, is an understanding of what they're looking for and why. And then they can go off and think about it and come back and say, right, I got more questions, or I can see why SHL and this role and working for you in the team would be something I would like to go forward with, and the formal process starts there onwards. Again, the reason I do it is, I think, and I've been doing it for a while actually, even before this candidate short market was there, is it helps get the right people into the door, and the right people not just from a qualification, skills and competencies and potential. Yes, all of that is important. You get the right people in because they are engaged and invested in the brand right up front. And then it's up to you as a company, once you get them in the door, to keep them engaged and keep them happy so that they stay in the company.
I agree. So here you go, global sales leaders, because I know you've got a process and so forth, but you've got to change it, especially in this market, right? So I know there's a lot of pressure around structure and process, but in a market like this, we've all got to adapt. And I think that initial preliminary chat can make a world of difference, especially to keep that candidate engaged, right? Yeah, completely agree. But I think if we could just sum it up, what would you say what is the best practice for sales leaders in a market like this moving forward? If you could just share 3 best practice strategies, that would be awesome.
Well, I don't know whether best practice or not, but it's good practices that have worked well for me. The first one is think of talent acquisition as a two-way street. And it is both parties doing what they need to do to understand that they are a good fit for each other. So you have your selection process, and understand that the candidate have their selection process. We're in a candidate short market. So even more so now than ever, and I would suggest you do it regardless of the candidate shortage, is cultivate the candidate, sell to them. When you say sell what your employer value proposition is and why they should join, and understand why they're picking you, number one. Number two, break the mold, right? The world has moved on in terms of what an ideal candidate looks like. So you might have had your requirements, if you like, or your job descriptions in terms of perishable skills like knowledge of tools, and some level of durable skills like knowledge of frameworks and methodologies. Move towards competencies in the future, because the future will change and change rapidly, even more so, future of work, even more so now than it has in the last decade. And so you want to invest in competencies that allows your workforce to shift with that change, and to be able to learn new methodologies and learn new skills and learn new tools as and when needed. And that future-proofs your workforce for the longer term. It also opens up your talent pool that you can go for. So if you're looking for SAP basis R3 developers, if that's what the role is, that skill is required, then go for it. But if you're looking for a software developer, then you might open it up to see what are the kind of technologies this person has had and how often have they been able to learn. So broaden your criteria, relook at your criteria. You got JDs that been around for job descriptions have been around for the longest time ever and say, do you really need this criteria? Because every criteria, it's like Google search. Every additional search word you put in narrows your search options. Can you afford to narrow your candidate pool by putting in more and more criteria? That's number 2. And number 3 is look for ways that you can balance your proposition beyond salary, beyond throwing money at the problem. And there's this old adage, we can throw money at the problem and solve anything. Not true. Not true. Candidates have what they are looking for from an employer has shifted quite dramatically, and it's just accelerated over the 2.5 years. The shift was already happening in terms of what's important. So work-life balance, and i.e. flexibility and the flexible hours. Location, right? Do you have to be in metropolitan locations for you to be able to be hired, or can you work remotely? The other thing is in terms of the usual gender diversity and neurodiversity comes into play, and ethnic diversity comes into play. That will be a consequence of having objective data-driven talent decisions. But the third point I'll talk about is parents returning to work. Participation rates have increased because of flexible remote work practices that have been necessitated over the last 2.5 years of COVID, right? So look at those demography, if you like, in terms of candidate pool. And the fourth one is me selfishly talking about, from my appearance, the older group. They've got a lot more to offer. There is some aspect of ageism there, but they've got a lot more to offer. Yes, assess for suitability in terms of competencies, in terms of their durable knowledge, skills and knowledge, kind of a thing. But do not discount that demography, because they've got experience and skills and capabilities that they can offer. And this is just trying to widen your talent pool that you can choose from. That probably would be the 3 things that I'll talk about. Candidate, sell to them, cultivate them, concentrate on your EVP and what's important to you, and broaden your talent pool. So really relook at your job descriptions and your must-have and nice-to-have criteria and reduce them to the essential few, which are really the essential few, and broaden your candidate pool by looking at parents returning to work and older people and remote locations.
I 100% agree. Coming from a recruiter perspective as well, I mean, I have this conversation with our clients on numerous occasions where, look at the transferable skill set, look at more than what the resume tells you, especially for sales roles. So I think you've spoken to that. But look, Mani, I've taken up a good amount of your time this afternoon. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us and share this with our following, because I think it's been quite insightful. So thank you again. You have a fabulous day, and really, really, really grateful to have you here with us.
Thanks, Reynah. A pleasure as always. Appreciate the opportunity.